how do you decide? And then I'm going to ask you about monetizing later, but let's start with, how do you decide to do what content, and in what order? How do you decide what order to put them in?
Well, for one, there are many other Black history podcasts who talk about history. So what I've done is like in any industry, in any business, I've done a competitive assessment. I really listened to other Black history podcasts and got, some in-depth perspective on the things that they talk about and a lot of the topics. And I decided to be a little bit different, go in a little bit of the opposite direction and talk about a lot of the things that they do not highlight in their podcast. But also, too, I look at key dates and events, and as well as working with my network of historians to really brainstorm on topics that we think would be beneficial that are traditionally not taught in many of the traditional educational spaces.
What do you mean when you say my network of historians? Like, do these people work for you, or how do you know them? How does that work? Is it all part of the podcast?
So my network of historians is more or less my community. These are historians who I've met throughout my life from back home, from Youngstown, Ohio, who have really poured into me and who have really taught me Black history. I used to attend Black history classes myself at a local community church in Youngstown, Ohio. And then I also attend virtual Black history classes as well. And so from learning from my community, our network of historians, they have recommended books, documentaries, and white papers that I should read into. And that's how I've kind of decided, based upon the things that I'm learning in the Black history space, I think this would be some good content to publish and put out for the podcast.
Nice. Hey, I want to highlight something that you mentioned. Now, I might not be quoting you directly, but paraphrasing at least. And I think it's something that the listener, regardless of what type of podcast that they have, something that they could focus on as well. And that was that, Brittany, you said, you listen to a lot of these other podcasts in your genre and, quote, I decided to be different. I wanted to do something different. I wanted a different approach. I wanted a different way of doing it. I want to stay there for a second. First and foremost, I'm hoping that listeners listening and thinking, yeah, I should know what's out there, and I probably should draw my line in the sand, do my own thing, have my own way of doing this. But what's the reason on your end why you wanted to kind of charter your own path over here? Was the other path not good enough, or what was the reason behind that?
Well, the other path of, what the current Black history landscape looks like today, it's really what's popular. Like in any other genre, many of the Black history podcasts talk about what's popular. They talk about the 1960s, the civil rights movement, and many of those things. And, the educational school system teaches a lot about those things as well. But there are also, too, a lot of topics that, when you look at our educational landscape, are being banned from Black history curriculum. And I really thought that where these topics are being prohibited, that my platform could showcase and bring to light many of these topics.
Okay, cool. And so was it so that you stood out, or was it just like a passion? It sounds more like it's a passion of you wanting to highlight things that are getting overlooked or banned, in better words. Is it that, or is it the fact that if you have a podcast that's doing something different, you'll attract different eyes, you'll stand out amongst the crowd?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it is my passion. My passion is that I serve underrepresented communities of color. And I believe, I've took it as my own obligation to really educate those in my community on issues that are impacting communities of color. And I think knowing our history is very important for any culture, for any race. You should know your history of your people. You should know where you come from, and you should not take what you're learning as face value. We should take it upon ourselves to really tap into our culture and to really learn the many different aspects of our history. But then also too, yes, when you talk, podcasting industry is what I've come to learn. There are a sea of podcasts. There are so many podcasts today. And so like any business or industry, you have to ask yourself, what is going to make me stand out in this industry? Of course, I can talk about many other topics. I can talk about business. I can talk about engineering. I could talk about pop culture. I can talk about Kim Kardashian and everything that's going on in the entertainment space. But really, what value does that bring to me? I'm more about value in educating people, as knowledge is power, but also too, again, what really is going to separate me apart and kind of bring a different. And I don't really see the other Black History podcasts as competitors. I see us as complementary assets to each other because Black history is so vast. There's many years of history that have, transpired. And I believe we each need to play a part in that.